Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. We are at the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started on this webinar today. I want to thank you all for joining me. My name is Jennifer Morris. I'm with MadCap Software, and today I am so excited to introduce Matthew Ellison, who will be presenting for us today. Now, Matthew has over 25 years of experience as a user assistance and e-learning professional in the software industry. He's a certified Flare instructor and consultant, a regular speaker at industry conferences, including our own MadWorld Learning Conference, and one of my personal favorite educators. So happy to have him today. And today, Matthew's going to be talking about how we can be more efficient by maximizing the reuse of the valuable information that's developed and maintained in Flare. So he's going to take a bit of a dive into snippets and variables and talk about techniques on how to increase the flexibility of these really important reusable components. So welcome, Matthew. I am so honored to have you join us today. We have a lot to cover, so just a few housekeeping tips before we begin. I want to remind everybody that this webinar is being recorded. So if you have to pop out early for whatever reason, not to worry. When this webinar is done, we'll be compiling it all and sending it out to everybody who's registered, so you will get a copy of the recording. There's also a questions panel in the GoToWebinar console. I would encourage you to use that if you see anything that comes up along the way. If you have any questions about what Matthew's presenting, feel free to jot it down in that questions panel. We're going to do our best to get to whatever we can at the end, and whatever we don't cover in the time allotted, then we'll certainly send out that question and answer document to everybody that registered along with the recording. So with that, again, Matthew, thank you for joining us today and for presenting. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. What a lovely introduction. Very kind words. And welcome, everyone. Nice to talk with you all. I'm sorry I won't be able to hear you, but at least I'll see your questions, I hope. So I'm going to be talking about maximizing reuse within MadCap Flare. I actually gave this presentation at MadWorld last year. So if anyone was at that conference, you may recognize some of the things I'm going to say. I have updated it though a little, so it's new and exciting. So let's get into it. Let's get on to the first slide. Oh, I think you've heard Jennifer say that. And you've also heard Jennifer tell you about me, so I'm not going to bore you saying who I am again. I except to remind you that I'm based in the UK. So in fact, it's just after 5 p.m. my time, a lovely evening in southern England, just down the road from Southampton. All right, what are we going to cover more specifically? I thought I'd just start by kind of summarizing what I mean by maximizing reuse. It sounds good, but let me tell you what I really mean by that. And then we'll have a quick survey of some of the most useful features in Flare that support reuse. After we've done that, we'll focus specifically on snippets and variables, which are two very powerful features of Flare that do support reuse. And I will show you how to create snippets and variables, how to use them, and how to share them with other authors by copying them to other projects. Now, some of these things you will already know, I'm sure. You'll have to forgive me if I tell you things you know. Hopefully by the end, we're going to get onto some sort of really new and exciting stuff that may be a little less familiar. But if you're starting out with Flare, then believe me that all this stuff about snippets, variables, and reuse is absolutely key. It underpins what is really great about Flare. So the final exciting bit at the end is that I'm going to be showing you how we can make our snippets look different depending on where we insert them. And the same with variables as well. We're going to be seeing snippets actually look totally different, not just when we build different targets, but when that snippet shows up in different topics within the same target. Now, normally you wouldn't expect that. Normally, the thing about a snippet is you create a snippet, you insert it into 10 topics, and it looks exactly the same in all 10 topics. That's one of the key benefits of snippets. What I'm going to show you is an additional little bit of flexibility using snippet conditions that will allow us to make that snippet vary slightly to suit the specific context of the snippet where we're showing it. All right, well, let's start with my kind of definition of reuse. And yeah, it's write once, use many times. It's all about being efficient. It's all about avoiding typing the same thing or even copying and pasting from the same source. There's nothing wrong with copy and paste for creating content. The problem is when you have to update that content. If you've copied the same text to 10 different locations, then you have to remember to update it in all those 10 different locations. So what we're going to do is we're going to use much more powerful reuse techniques that allows us to write and maintain, I should have said maintain once, but to use many times. And we can do that at various different levels, either at word or phrase level, or slightly larger chunks, either entire paragraphs or multiple paragraphs, or indeed entire topics. But apart from reusing content, it's also useful in Flair to be able to reuse assets. For example, the style sheet. Having written a great style sheet, you don't really want to have to go through that pain of doing that again every time you create a new Flair project. And you don't necessarily want to just copy that style sheet into a new project, because then you have the same problem of maintenance that I was talking about earlier. What we'd like to have is a situation where we can write a style sheet, have it propagate into 10, 20, 50 different Flair projects, and maintain it from a single source. And I'm going to be talking about how we do that. That's not going to be the main focus, actually, of this webinar. The webinar is really going to be focusing more on the content, and we're going to be focusing, as you know, as we said, on snippets and variables. So what do we mean by maximizing reuse? We've said reuse is a good thing. I've titled this presentation Maximizing Reuse. And well, I suppose I mean that we should do it whenever we can. You know, we should take every opportunity to reuse information. But I've qualified that slightly. I said take all reasonable opportunities. And the reason I say that is that I have seen people get a little bit reuse obsessive. I've seen people kind of measure the success of what they do by the amount of reuse they achieve. And that's not really your end goal. Your end goal is to present good, effective, useful information to your users. And we should be doing that in the most efficient and effective ways. And sometimes I find that focusing too much on reuse can actually create more work and take more time than the time it saves. So can we go too far? Yes, I think we have to be a little bit careful about going too far. I've seen some wonderful Flair projects that use sort of 200 different condition tags, for example, and have weird and wonderful ways of combining them that only the author understands. And if, you know, if they were to leave the company, I really would fear for anyone being able to pick it up and work with it and understand it. So I think you've got to be a little careful. I think you've got to ensure that the time you spend sort of planning and managing and understanding and working with your reuse techniques, such as conditions and snippets and variables, should always be less than the time you save through you know, more efficient maintenance of your content. So do watch out for that. And my recommendation is that you keep your reuse at a paragraph level or higher, certainly when it comes to snippets. I guess variables are an exception to that, because we do use variables for short words or phrases or numbers, such as version numbers, telephone numbers. But on the whole, when we're reusing information or applying conditions, I would apply conditions to paragraphs or higher, paragraphs or groups of paragraphs, not to sentences or phrases within a paragraph. And one of the reasons is that by going at less than paragraph level, then you can cause problems for localization. It's very difficult for translators to work with parts of paragraphs, or certainly parts of sentences, and to translate them out of context. So yes, we can take it too far. Make sure you have a sensible approach that is well and clearly understood by you and your colleagues, that doesn't require some sort of PhD in logic to really get to grips with. And bear in mind localization if that's an issue for you. Now, you know what? If I was doing this at a live conference and I had people in front of me, I would probably ask for people to call out their suggestions and their ideas at this point. And when I'm doing training, I like to involve users. Now, I can't do that with you, I'm afraid, because you can't talk to me. So if I ask you to suggest ideas of features, you're either going to have to shout very loud, or we're going to have to use telepathy. So I don't know, have a think about some features that you use, and let's see if they, someone was thinking snippet. Well, I've mentioned snippets many times, and variables. That was a bit obvious. Glossary term conversion. When I ask people about reuse of content, they don't always think of this. And funnily enough, it's not something I see done very often. Flare has a feature that allows you to create a glossary of terms. Most of us do that. But then what we can do is, when we build our target, is we can have Flare look throughout our topics for any of those glossary terms and to link it automatically to the definition. So the definition just pops up as the user clicks on it or mouses over it, which means that we're effectively reusing those definitions in multiple locations. They're popping up in potentially hundreds of different places throughout our help. If you wonder where you could do that, have a go at looking up glossary term conversion in Flare's help. It's an interesting feature. Project linking. Now, this is absolutely key. This is key to that way of sharing assets that I was talking about, sharing your style sheet across multiple projects. So this is great for reusing assets such as style sheets, but also a way of being able to share pieces of content such as topics, common topics, or shared snippets. We can do it by linking projects and sharing those snippets across multiple projects. And I'll be talking about various strategies for linking projects a little bit later in this webinar. Master pages. Did anyone think master pages? The reason I put that in is that master pages are incredibly powerful, because whatever you put on a master page potentially appears in every topic that you build. If you're building HTML5 output and you put a link to your website at the bottom of the master page, then what you have is a link to your website in every single topic. So instead of having to insert that link in 100 times, you've inserted it once. If the link needs to change, you're changing it in one place. You're changing it in the master page. That's a great example of good, efficient content reuse. Very simple one. And I guess the same thing applies with page layouts, where you can put information in headers and footers and have them appear on multiple pages. Now, as I mentioned, for this webinar, we're going to focus primarily on snippets and variables. And I'm going to be showing you some pretty advanced ways of customizing snippets for different contexts. But before we get into that really exciting, wonderful stuff, let's cover the basics. Let's make sure we know how snippets and variables works. And if you're just starting out with Flare, this is going to be really important. And first of all, I think it's probably important to know the difference between snippets and variables. What would you use each of these features for? And then we'll see how to create them and how to use them. And I'm going to point out my favorite feature of Flare. It's kind of connected with variables. So what do they have in common? What are the key differentiating aspects of them? And the way I do this in a training course is, again, I I try and do as little work as I can on training courses. So what I like to do is put up an empty table like this and then have my students call out to me their suggestions as to how this should be filled in. Now, again, I can't do this with you, so I've got to imagine what you're thinking, and I've got to tune into your minds, and okay, well, we'll fill it in together. Content type, variables. Variables, basically what we're talking about here is a string of plain text. When you define a variable, you're just simply defining it as a sequence of characters, which could be letters, numbers. So it's going to be what? A product name. Well, we'll come on to examples in a minute. Key thing about variables is you cannot store markup within a variable. So you can't have bold text. You can't have colors. You can't have styles within a variable. It is literally a string of text, which, okay, once it's been inserted into a topic, can of course be styled by styling the paragraph you've inserted into, but you can't store that formatting in the variable. Whereas snippets, a bit different. This is a chunk of XHTML, including markup. So when you create a snippet, you're literally just what we're talking about is a section of a topic. Topics are written in XHTML in XHTML format. A snippet is just a part of a topic. It could be a couple of paragraphs. It could be a paragraph and a table. It could be a table and 3 images. It could be a part of a paragraph. And we'll come on to that in a moment. As far as typical size goes, variables, we can say pretty much definitively they're small. they're less than a paragraph. They're typically 1 or 2 words. You know, it's a name, it's a number. Snippets, typically larger. When I work with snippets, I'm normally talking about at least 1 paragraph, but they can be less than a topic. I tend not to use snippets in this way, but you can have what are called, I beg your pardon, they have to be less than a topic. They have to be less than a topic. If they were as big as a topic, they would be a topic. So we're talking about part of a topic. They're typically larger. They can be small, and they can, in fact, be less than a paragraph. You could have a snippet that was just a couple of words. And if you really cared about your company name being always written in a certain font and certain color, then you might want to store your company name as a snippet and then to insert that snippet in line into a paragraph rather than using a variable. Because if you use a variable, it's just a string of text. You can't store the formatting with it. So as far as examples of use go, variables, we're talking about names, typically, things like a product name, company name, phone number. I love using variables for phone numbers because phone numbers are so easy to get wrong. If you try and type a phone number, if you type it 10 times, chances are you're going to make a mistake one of those times. If you use a variable, it's always going to be accurate. What's more, if the phone number changes, you have 1 place to change it, to update it. Snippets. As I say, my snippets are normally a sort of decent sized chunk of information. I'm normally talking about at least a paragraph. Could be a warning, for example, a standard warning where I've got the wording exactly right. Maybe my legal department has checked the wording of this warning, and I need to make sure that every time I issue this warning, I get exactly the right text. And if I need to update it, I have 1 place to update it. But I might also use a snippet for a sequence of steps. Maybe there's a sequence of steps for opening, a main screen that I need to repeat in many different places. I would use a snippet for that. As far as file types go, variables are stored inside the project organizer in an XML file with an FLVAR extension, flair variable. And you're going to typically store multiple variables within that file. You might have a variable file that has might have 10 variables with their associated definitions in. Actually, I'm going to be talking in a few minutes' time about why you might have more than 1 variable file. I tend to have 1 variable file which is kind of project specific, and another separate variable file, which has come from my sort of global central project, which is going to be my core variables that I want to use in all of my projects. Snippets, even though they're XML files, they have their own special file extension, they're FLSNP files, and they live in the, well, variables live in the variables, in project variables, snippets live in your content folder. Most of you might be shouting out, no, they don't. They live in content resources. Let's be specific. Content resources snippets. And yes, they normally do. Content resources snippets is normally where you would store snippets. But in fact, that's not a hard and fast rule. Flare allows you to keep snippets wherever you like, as long as it's within the content folder. So strictly, I would say the location of your snippets is somewhere within content, typically within resources snippets. Oh, and my favorite feature of Flare, remember I said I was going to tell you about this, my favorite feature of Flare is that we can override the definitions of variables in targets. So we can define our variable in the variable file that I was talking about, in this FLVAR, but then for a specific target, maybe when we're building a target for our European audiences or for our Asian users, we need to change that variable. Perhaps the telephone number is different for that particular market or for that particular audience. And we can do it by redefining the variable in the target file. And that literally is my favorite feature of Flare. It's extremely powerful. And I'm going to be using this feature a little bit later in this webinar. All right, that was the boring stuff out of the way. Hopefully from now on we're going to be doing, we're going to be getting into Flare and actually doing some stuff and doing something more practical. So thank you for staying with me on that. Two distinct types of snippets. Well, I already mentioned this, didn't I? I said that my snippets tend to be long. They tend to be one or more paragraphs, but that we can have inline snippets. So I mentioned that already. How do we create a snippet? I'm going to show you how to do this in a moment. Typically, what I do is I will be typing some content into a topic, and I will think to myself, I may need to reuse this content. This is content that is actually quite useful to refer to elsewhere. So what I'll do, having typed that content into a topic, is I will choose to convert the content I've already entered into a snippet. I'm not very good at planning ahead. I mean, in theory, what we could do is we could plan all our snippets and create all our snippets and then insert them into topics. Well, I tend to do it the other way around. So I'm going to show you how we can create snippets from topic content. I'm sure a lot of you have already done this. And then I'm going to show you how to insert a snippet into another topic. Again, fairly simple, but it's important, so I will show you how to do it. The key thing here is that when you're inserting block level snippets, and by block level I mean a snippet that has one or more paragraphs within it, then you must insert the snippet into an empty paragraph. So the first thing you need to do is to create an empty paragraph in the topic where you want to insert the snippet, and then insert your snippet. I'll show you that in a moment. And then I tend to just drag it in from the Content Explorer. You can pin snippets as well, and I'll show you how to do that. And I'm also going to show you something that I don't think snippets were really designed to do, and that is that I use snippets as templates for new content. For example, when I'm going to insert a 3-column table into a topic, I don't usually do that by using insert table. I use a pre-prepared snippet that I have that has a table with 3 columns with the standard headings that I usually need for those 3 columns, and I drag the snippet into my topic. And then I do something which I'll show you in just a moment. But let's just go right back to basics. I said I was going to show you how to create a snippet, then insert it, and then pin, and then we'll use this sort of reusable content template thing. So I'm going to go into Flare, and I have a little project here with some sample topics. And by the way, this project has the wonderful snippet conditions, which I'm going to be showing you later, I will make this project available to you after the webinar, so you can download this and play around with it yourself. What I'm about to show you here is not very exciting, but the rest is more interesting. So look, creating a snippet. Here I've got a chunk of information about this Ipswitch tool. I've got a logo and I've got a couple of paragraphs. Now I've just thought to myself, that information about the Ipswitch tool, that would be quite useful in other topics as well. So I'm going to highlight those 3 paragraphs, and I'm going to go on the home ribbon to this nice big create snippet button and tell Flare I would like that content to be a snippet. And then it's really easy. I just need to provide a name for the snippet. So I could call it Ipswitch tool. Flare is going to automatically, by default, put it in my resources snippets folder, but I don't have to put it there. If for any reason I wanted to put it in another folder in my project, I can, although resources snippets is kind of the natural place, I guess, for it. And it's also going to do the job when I click create, the result is not only do I have a new snippet, which we should now see in my, there it is, in my snippets folder in the Content Explorer, but this bit of content within this topic is now a snippet. And which means I can't actually edit it anymore on this topic. The only way I could edit that, it would be to open the snippet, which incidentally you can do from this topic by right-clicking and choosing Open Link. That'll take me into the snippet and allow me to edit the snippet. So I could add more text that way. All right, so I now have a snippet. I'm using the snippet already in that original topic, but it's not much point in having a snippet if I'm only using it once. So let's see how I can use that snippet again. Here's another topic that's talking about the Ipswitch tool. Actually, I'm using a variable here called product name. So it's not mentioning Ipswitch, or it doesn't look as though it's mentioning Ipswitch, but believe me, it is talking about Ipswitch. So let's insert the snippet about Ipswitch in this topic. So look, that was the first thing I had to do, create an empty paragraph, and then I can insert my snippet into the empty paragraph. And the easiest way I know is to just drag the snippet into that empty paragraph. Alternatively, you can use the snippet button. And the snippets button is quite useful because it actually gives me a list of all my recently used snippets. So I don't have to hunt around to find the snippet. If it's one I've only just used a little bit earlier, I can find it in that list. What's more, I can pin that snippet. So I thought, yeah, that could be a useful snippet tomorrow or next week as well. So why don't I pin it, which means whenever I click on the insert snippet button from now on, that snippet is going to be right at the, oh, excuse me, I just clicked on the button itself rather than the drop down. If I click on the drop down, that pin snippet is always there at the top and available to me. So if you have snippets that you find really, really useful, like a standard warning you frequently need to insert, why don't you pin it and then it's available without having to find it in the Content Explorer. Okay, the last thing I mentioned was using snippets as content templates. And I'm going to give a quick demonstration of that now. I have a sample topic here where it's clear that I'm about to enter a table. I want to insert a table at this point. Now, it's not just any old table, it's a standard table with certain standard headings. It's the same format of table which I'm using repeatedly, perhaps, in this particular help project. So I don't want to just do insert table because that would be creating a table from scratch. I'd have to put my headings in, I'd have to set the column widths. I'd be kind of reinventing the wheel. I'd be doing work which I've previously done. So what I'm going to do instead is I am going to drag a snippet into that empty paragraph. I have a snippet called Holidays Table. I'm going to drag it in. And there we have a new table with 3 columns with my standard headings. The problem is, and I can hear you thinking this, the problem is I can't edit this table now because it's a snippet. And if I did edit it by going into the snippet, then it would mean that every topic that used this snippet would have the same information in the table. What I actually want is perhaps to create a different table each time. So, well, that's easy. All I have to do is to right-click on this snippet and convert it to normal content. Don't be put off by the phrase convert to text. It doesn't mean it's going to convert this table into regular text. It's going to convert my snippet into normal content so that now I can just fill in this table in any way I like. So from now on, if ever I need to insert a 3-column table that has those headings, I can always just drag the table in, drag the snippet in, convert it to text, and I have a brand new table. And you know, that's a useful technique for all sorts of things, all sorts of kind of empty items that you may need to fill in different ways throughout your projects. I told you it was 5 o'clock in the evening and it was so bright outside, I'd forgotten it was actually going to get dark during this webinar. So excuse me one moment, I am just going to step up and switch on the light because it's getting darker and darker around me. I'm going to do that. So give me just 20 seconds to do that. I'll be right back with you. And I'm sure that can be edited out of the recording. Okay, let's go back to my slides. So we've started using snippets, and one of the things people often ask me is if they've used a snippet many times, they say to me, how can I find out where I've used that snippet? And there's a really useful little feature in Flare that you can use not just for snippets, but for images, for topics. You can use view links to find out which topics or which other items within your Flare project link to the item we're interested in. So if you right-click on a snippet, such as this bank holiday snippet, choose view links, Flare is going to give you a list of all the topics that actually are referencing that snippet. In other words, all the topics that I've inserted that snippet into. And that could be really useful information if you're planning to update a snippet, or even if you're thinking of deleting a snippet, just to check, oh, how many places am I using this? What's going to be the impact of changing this snippet? Is that going to be a change that's relevant and appropriate to those 4 topics that I've inserted it into? I mentioned earlier that we may want to share snippets between projects. I mean, what I've been talking about so far is reusing a snippet in multiple topics within the same project. But what if it's, I don't know, some copyright information, or a legal statement, or some acknowledgements, or even a sort of generic description of one of your company's services that you might want to reference from multiple manuals. You know, each one of your manuals, each one of your products may need to refer back to this sort of common service that your company provides. Now, in that case, it's not only useful to be able to reuse the snippet within a project, but you'd like to be able to use that snippet in multiple projects, and also make sure that if the content needs to change, that it will change in all those projects. It will remain consistent. And we've already talked about what's wrong with cut and paste, because, or copy and paste, because you know, the problem there is with maintenance. If you copy, you're just creating multiple copies, which you have to remember to update. So I'm going to suggest that we use project linking. If you don't know what that is, then believe me, if you're going to get the best from Flare, you really should know what it is. It's something you need to find out about. You need to know about project linking. It is absolutely key to success with Flare. And I'm going to be talking at rather a high level at the different sort of linking strategies you can use, the different ways of linking related projects, or just of sort of linking in a very ad hoc, opportunistic way. And finally, I'm going to talk about a sort of top-down approach, a sort of global project approach, which I think is by far the best approach to project linking. I'm not going to go into the precise detail of how you link projects. You do it using a Flare project import file. I'm probably not going to have time to show you that, but I'm just going to show you a few sort of different strategies. Oh, if you are doing this, bear in mind, or keep in mind, that it means that files are going to be moving, transferring, copying themselves between projects. And what I think that means is that particularly if you're sharing content with other authors, that you need to have an established naming convention for all your files, so that the name is going to mean something to all of your authors. You have a way of sorting and categorizing the information that is understood and used by everyone, because it's no good you sort of using your own strategy for naming that is completely different from a colleague if you're going to start mixing up that content by sharing each other's files. That's going to create a real mix and a confusing mix. So make sure you're working by the same naming convention. All right, now I said one way of sharing content would be sort of to say, well, I've got two projects, Project A and Project B, and there's some kind of relationship between them. They're two related products. So I've got maybe 3 snippets here. I've got these yellow snippets. Those represent snippets. I might think, well, if I've put those snippets in Project A, then maybe they should also be in Project B. Maybe Project B could use those snippets as well. So what I could do is create a link between Project A and Project B. The way you do that actually is to create an import, is to add an import file in Project B. It's a bit counterintuitive, this. You do all the work in the file, in the project that you're pulling the files into. So I would create a link. I do that by setting up this Flare project import file, and as a result, the snippets would come over into Project B, and from then on, those snippets should be maintained in Project A. I would not want to edit those in Project B. If I did, if I changed them in Project B, the chances are my changes are going to be overwritten, because if the person editing Project A makes a change, their change is going to come in and overwrite my change. So the idea is, once you've set up a link like this, that any change or any updates are done in Project A. I said I wouldn't go into detail on the Flare project import file, but just to say that it's pretty simple. It's just a little file that sort of names the source, names the project that the content is coming from, and specifies what type of information you want to pull in. So I'm saying pull in content from Project A, and I'm interested in snippets. So as a result, those snippets come into Project B. And, I could do the same thing. I could maybe set up a link between Project C and D, and I could pull in snippets from Project D into Project C. I'd have to do that using a Flare project import file. And again, this time, the maintenance of those snippets would take place in Project D. So I'm maintaining those snippets in Project A and those snippets in Project D. What I mean by more ad hoc sharing is to say, look, I've got 4 projects, and yeah, actually this particular snippet, this individual snippet in Project D, that would work in Project B. So why don't I pull that in by using an import file? So this time I'm using an import file that is specifically saying, let's import this specific snippet. And then maybe it makes sense to pull that snippet into Project B and maybe into Project D as well, and then that snippet into Project C. you can see after a while this is going to get complicated, and the end result is I've got lots of different Flare project import files, and I've got to remember when I'm editing that snippet, I've got to do it there and not there. And even though this works, and even though it is information reuse, it's not a system I would be comfortable with. What I would be more comfortable with is this approach. And this is the approach I guess a lot of you are already using, which is that you centralize the sort of common core information. You have, what I typically have is a special Flare project that I'm not necessarily going to be using to create content from. I usually call it my global project, and I'll put all my snippets in there, and I will then import those snippets into each of the other projects. So I'm pulling those common snippets into A, B, C, and D. And then it's nice and simple, because if I need to update any of those common snippets, I know where to do that. I'm going to do that within the global project. And any updates I make in that global project are going to propagate out to these other projects. And that's a nice centrally controlled system that I think is much easier to maintain. As an alternative, you could use external resources, but that doesn't have quite the same sort of centralized, coordinated approach. So it's not my preferred approach. It allows two-way synchronization. What I like about global projects is information flows out of the global projects into the other projects and can't flow back. All right, variables. Oh gosh, right. I will step up the pace. I'm sorry. I need to make sure I get to the end bit, which is the wonderful, exciting bit. So 3 different types of variables: system variables, things like page numbers, date. These are variables that are provided for you. What's more interesting is we can create our own custom variables for things like product names and telephone numbers. And you would do that by using this create text variable button. There is also the possibility of creating your own custom date variables, and this mysterious button in the middle in the variable editor is for adding alternative definitions to variables, which means that having set up for example, a phone number variable and given it the phone number of your head office, you may then want to add as alternative phone numbers the phone numbers of your overseas offices, so that they can then be chosen in particular targets, selected in particular targets. The way you do that in Flare is we work in our variable file. So I'm just going to open up my project-specific variable file. Why don't I go ahead and create a standard text variable. These are the 3 buttons I was talking about. So the button on the left is for a standard text variable. Let's go for a phone number variable. And what I might do is put in the UK phone number, which would be a +44 number. But then here's where I might think, oh, but if I'm building a target for my US market, they should call the US number. So why don't I add an alternative definition, which would be this button here. I'll add a new definition. So this is not a new variable. It's still the phone number variable, but I'm going to add in the number that my US customers should use. And the end result, and I can have as many alternative definitions, by the way, as I like. But the default definition of the variable is this one, but these other variable definitions are available for selection in a target. So the way it works now is if I have a target, if I have any target, and I'm just going to open that target and I'll leave it to open while I continue talking. If I open that target, I can choose to override the value of that variable in the target. And remember I said that was one of my features, if not my very favorite feature of Flare. By the way, I need a new laptop. and and I'm going to be getting one very soon. I promised myself I'm going to be buying a new laptop this month. This one is 5 years old and it's running a little bit slow. Particularly when I open a target. All right, so if I go to the variable, here we go. We look at the, oh, did I save my variables? I don't think I did. So there's my phone number variable, and look, in this target, I can either accept the default phone number, or I can, from the drop down, choose the US variable number. So if this were a target for my US audience, that would be the variable I would choose. Inserting variables, what I love about variables, and one of my, again, it's another of my favorite features of Flare, I suppose. And one of the reasons I create variables is that from now on, if I need to insert a phone number, I can do that by just typing the first 3 characters of the variable definition. So if I type +44, Flare is going to recognize that as matching one of my variable definitions and is going to auto-suggest that I insert a variable. So all I have to do from now on is type +44, press enter, and that has inserted the variable for me. We can share variables between projects in the same way as we can share snippets between projects. So what I recommend you do is set up a standard variable file that you store inside that global project I was talking about. And all your sort of standard variables like your company name, your company phone number, the company city, anything which is going to be common across all of your Flare projects, you can define within that within your global variable set. So I actually have typically, in all of the projects I work in, I typically have one variable set which is my shared variables, which you'll see from that little link symbol has come from another project. It's probably come from my global project. It's been imported from my global project. And I have some additional variables which are specific to this particular project. So I would just define them in a separate variable file. Now you may say, okay, I can see why company name and phone number and postcode are in the shared variables, but what about product name and version? Wouldn't that need to be different in each project? Aren't you going to be talking about different products and different versions in each of my projects? And yes, that's true. The reason I've put them, though, in my shared variable set is to remind me that I always need to have a product name. I always need to have a version. So I put it in my shared variables, which automatically gives any project I create a product name variable. The way I then define that is in my target. Do you remember we said we can define variables in the target? So what I'm going to do is, because I've imported my variables from the global project into project A, so I can't then edit the variables in project A. I can't redefine the variables. So what I'm going to do is define the variable in my target. So I'll have a product name variable, and in the target for project A, I will define I will insert the name of the particular product. And the way you do that is, so those are my standard variables. This is the variables that have come from the global project in the variable editor. And you'll see that what I've done is just for product name said, oh look, enter product name in target. Or what I sometimes do is actually just put the words product name. The advantage of putting product name is when I'm typing into topics, I can just type PRO and Flare will then prompt me to insert the product name variable. Product name, enter, will insert the variable. And then in my target editor, I will edit that product name and make it whatever it should be, FictionSoft or whatever the name of my variable needs to be. All right, so the final bit of flexibility, and maybe this is the reason why some of you have tuned into this webinar, is how can we customize the content of snippets depending on where we insert them within our project. This is going to be really powerful. And well, first of all, I've already mentioned that we can change the names of variables, but we can do it in snippets as well. I said that we can change variables for different targets, but we can even do it in snippets. Now I'm going to show you now an example I have. As you may know, in the UK, the UK consists of a number of fairly united countries: Scotland, England and Wales, and Northern Ireland. And although we agree on many things, we can't agree on the same public holidays. So if we were to present a list of public holidays, that list would need to be slightly different depending on whether we were talking about Scotland or Northern Ireland or England and Wales. Now, what I want to be able to do is to present that list, but depending on where I present it, whether it's in a Scotland topic or an England topic or a Northern Ireland topic, to show the correct public holidays. Now, the way I've done it is I've set up a snippet because I want to reuse this table of holidays. I want to write my list of holidays once. So here is my list of holidays. We call them bank holidays in the UK. This is a snippet. And what I've done is I've made a list of every single holiday, whether it's a Scotland holiday or an Ireland holiday or a shared holiday. For example, 25th of December, we all celebrate Christmas Day on 25th of December. So that's a shared holiday. The ones that aren't shared, I've put conditions on. So for example, this row of the table, I have inserted a condition to say that this is specifically a Scotland holiday. It's not applicable in England and Wales and Northern Ireland. England and Wales share the same holidays, by the way. 2nd of April, Easter Monday, is celebrated in England and Wales and Northern Ireland. So that has two conditions, giving it this sort of rather horrible, murky brown color. Up here, I have a variable. And the variable, I think, is my, what have I done? If I hover over it, we'll see that it is a UK region variable. And it's showing England and Wales because that's the way I defined it in my variable set. But what I'm now going to be able to do is I'm going to be able to change the value of that variable depending on where I insert this topic, this snippet. I'm also going to be able to change which of these conditions is shown. So for example, let's go into my Scotland topic. I have some Scotland topics here. I have a calendar of Scotland topic. And in this topic, I have a little introduction in Latin. And I've inserted my snippet. And you can see that it says bank holidays in Scotland. I've managed to change the variable. And I've done that because Flair enables you in your topic properties. I don't know if you're aware of this, but if you go into topic properties, Flair has a snippet variables tab. And this is where you are able to change the definition of any variables that are used within a snippet in this topic. So I can go in and I can say, no, I don't want the variable to say England and Wales. I want it in this topic to show Scotland. So it says bank holidays in Scotland in the snippet. What is more, I don't really want the snippet to show all of the holidays. I don't want it to show St. Patrick's Day because that's specifically an Ireland holiday. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my topic properties again, and I'm going to go to the snippet conditions tab, and I'm going to say, look, only include the Scotland conditions. By the way, doing that is exactly the same as doing that. Doesn't matter which I do. So I'm going to say just include Scotland. And what we should see as a result is that this snippet is now presented differently within this topic. If we look at another topic, let's go into the Northern Ireland topic, calendar of Northern Ireland. We're going to be seeing exactly the same source snippet. I only have one source for this list of holidays. This is the same snippet, and yet at the top it says holidays in Northern Ireland, because within this topic, I've set my snippet variable to have a value of Northern Ireland, to have a definition of Northern Ireland. And while I'm in here, what I'm also going to do is say just include the Northern Ireland conditions within the snippet. So suddenly this snippet, I'm sorry, is presented differently. So the end result is I have one snippet. I have one place in which I can maintain all of my holiday information. That is my resources, snippets, what is it, holidays table, this snippet. This is my single source. Oh, I beg your pardon, that was not the one. I think I already had it opened, didn't I? The bank holiday snippet. Yeah, that's my single source, and from that I can update everything. And by the way, this made it really easy to update my presentation from last year, because when I did this at MadWorld last year, I was talking about 2017 holidays. Updating it to 2018 was really easy. I could just go through this one table and make the changes to the dates, and it updated correctly in all the topics. The end result is, if we have a look at the output, and I have built this previously, is we look at the Scotland calendar in the output. It shows a table of holidays, and it is showing specifically the holidays in Scotland. Go to England and Wales. There is a similar table, but customized to the English and Wales holidays. The same snippet appearing in multiple locations, but presenting slightly different information, different variable definition, and different conditions being displayed. Now you've probably used conditions, but you've probably only included or excluded conditions at the target level. Here we're including or excluding conditions at a topic level within our snippets, and I think that's very powerful. So just to finalize, I've shown you all of that. I've shown you how to do it. And the only other way of doing this without snippet conditions would have been to have had lots of snippets, each containing the information that was common. So I could have had a snippet for the Christmas and Boxing Day holidays, a snippet for the Easter holidays, a snippet for the New Year's holiday, and then sort of piece together those snippets for each topic. But then my information would have been spread across multiple topics and much less easy to maintain. So what have we said? Flare has a lot of features that support reuse and make your maintenance much easier and make you more efficient. Snippets and variables, great. Definitely going to be more efficient, and you're going to be more consistent. Definitely you should recommend storing any shared content, including snippets and variables, in a global project and making sure that they're consistent across multiple projects. Don't forget, you can redefine variables in targets, and you can redefine variables within individual snippets. And you may be able to find an application yourself for using those snippet conditions that I've just been showing you. Certainly gives you more flexibility. I'm sorry, Jennifer, I said to you I would finish early, didn't I, and take questions. Okay. You've told me I had an hour, and I guess I've been greedy and I've taken up the hour. But I know you wanted to say a few things about this final couple of slides.
Yes, just a couple slides, and we have just a couple questions filling in that hopefully we can just get to one or two. I know we're at the end of the hour. I just could maybe ask everybody to stick with us just a couple minutes. Quick reminder, for signing up today, you do get a discount on these 2 upcoming training classes. We didn't touch too much on CSS today, but if you want to take some of your single sourcing skills to the next level, some of these things that Matthew touched on today, I'd encourage you to check out the modules that we cover for each of these classes. They're coming up next month. They're live and instructor-led, and you do get a discount for registering, for signing up for today's webinar. And then on the next slide, just want to remind everyone that we've got 2 learning conferences coming up. For those of you in North America, we've got our conference here in San Diego in June. beautiful Hotel del Coronado. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you've come before, we hope to see you again. If you've never come, I'd encourage you to make your way out, particularly if you're in the Great White North. Come to Frost and sunny San Diego. It's a lot of fun. And then this year we've just launched MadWorld Europe. So we're going to be in Prague in September. The schedule of speakers and all of the sessions, they're going to be posted on our website next Tuesday. So keep your eyes peeled. You want to join us in Europe, we would love to see you there. Hopefully it makes it easier for our European customers to come and learn. And come see Matthew there, of course. So hopefully you can join us there. We will have some early registration discounts for Europe posted. Well, those are actually posted now. And then if you're looking to attend MadWorld in San Diego, if you haven't yet registered, there is a registration discount through March 31st. So pop over to our site to learn more about those discounts. We just have a couple minutes. There's just a couple questions that I'd like to get to.
Okay.
One in particular, when you were, I think this came about when you were talking about global project linking. The question is, this is brilliant. How is global project linking impacted by Git source control? So for example, 4 writers working on different projects at different times. I think the question is, how do you sync these changes from the global project? Is there a checkout to global, or is a checkout of the global to sync it? Does it automatically happen? Maybe just a quick mention on how that works.
Sure. I mean, first of all the authors, all 4 authors would have to have access to the global project on their network. So there would be someone would need to be able to make sure that what was checked out, what was available outside of Git was always up to date. Or maybe you had a system where if you were about to make sure you were updating from the global project, that the first thing you did was got the latest information out of Git for the global project and then synchronized to the global project. And that may cause changes in your own local project, which you'll then need to check in your own Git database, but that's just the same as if you'd made changes manually to topics. So it's really updating from the global project is just a quick and easy way of making sure that your topics are updated. You still need to have them in source control. So your global project will be in source control and each of your other projects will still be in source control, and it should all work. But yeah, it does. You do need to make sure you've got a system for that.
Good. Another question, it was actually came up, kind of a great observation. This is kind of a fun tip that it's maybe good to mention. The viewer says she uses auto suggestions rather than dragging or pinning. And wondering if you use that, or you can. I know it's an option in Flare you can turn on. I suspect that some folks like it. It's like a personal preference kind of thing. But I think it's a nice tip if you like to keep yourself in check.
I know. I love using auto suggestion for variables. I mentioned that you know the most common way I put in a variable is type 3 characters. The auto suggestion pops up. You can do the same thing for snippets. It means you have to go into your Flare program options. I think the snippets also suggest is not selected by default.
Correct.
So it's something you have to positively select. The only thing is that you may find that it's just auto suggesting too frequently, and that too many times it's auto suggesting. You're thinking, no, I was just typing the word the, and it happened to be that this snippet began with the word the, and you know, and it can get irritating that it's just suggesting too many times. So I mean, try it. You can always change the auto suggest to a larger number of characters. Maybe change it to sort of 7 or 8 characters for snippets, but just 3 for variables. Try and tune it to whatever suits you. The other thing is, I think there's a minor performance hit when you have auto suggestion switched on. So if you're like me with a 5-year-old laptop, you may find that it's, you know, most of the time it's quicker to not have auto suggestion on for snippets.
Right. Yeah, that's good suggestion. So yeah, for everybody on the call, if you don't have the auto suggest for variables, go to the file menu, go to options, and you'll see the auto suggestion for variables in snippets there. It's a nice thing to kind of play with.
And you can specify the number of characters you have to type before the auto suggestion pops up.
Correct. And I've never tried it, but the question just came in. Can you resize the auto suggestion window? I've never actually tried that, but if I don't know if we have time to test that quickly, but we can certainly get back to you and let you know.
I don't know. What I do know is that sometimes the auto suggest window will have more than one suggestion in it, because I might type +44 and maybe I have 5 variables that all begin with +44, and the auto suggest window will then allow me to pick the one I want before I press enter. So maybe you're asking, yeah, if there was a very long list, is there a way of making that window bigger? I don't know is the honest answer. Yeah.
Yeah. And if it doesn't, we'll certainly get that added as a feature suggestion for you.
All right.
Seems like that would be useful. One quick question about MadWorld, for everybody, the question was, will the content in Europe be the same level as the US? We will have a different schedule for MadWorld Europe, and we'll have a variety of sessions that you can attend based on your skill set, from beginner, intermediate to advanced. And we will also have an advanced workshop day in Europe as well. So the sessions will be different, but we'll have sessions for all levels, all skill sets. So I hope that helps. So keep your eyes peeled for Tuesday. That will be up on the website.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm doing a couple of sessions at the Europe conference that I've previously done at the US conference. So yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's exactly the same level. I'm planning to pitch it. I'm going to assume the same kind of level of expertise in my audience.
Yes, correct. So, but yeah, we're kind of running over our hour, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
I'm sorry about that.
We'll keep. Oh no, you're fine. This question window will be open for just a moment as I close, so feel free to jot them down. We'll send out a question and answer document to everybody so you have them. Matthew, thank you again for your time. It's one of my most favorite subjects. I always learn so much from you, so thanks for presenting today. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week, and we'll see you on the next webinar. So take care, everybody. Talk to you all soon.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you.